Welcome to the Podgress Report. I wanted to take a minute before this episode to simply thank you for listening to the Podgress Report, for subscribing, for sharing it with other people who might benefit from the research and the journalists and the authors and the success stories that we bring weekly to this podcast, all on the topic of workplace wellness, how to lead, how to be the CEO of you.com. We're building a strong community of people dedicated to a healthier what's next and a healthier workplace. Thanks for being a part of it. And now, today's episode. In a world where more than half of us report some level of burnout regularly, it can seem to be an impossibility that things could actually be different, that things could be better. But I don't think it's impossible at all. And you shouldn't either. And here's why. It's clear to me after having over 100 conversations and poring over a ton of research and a ton of the data that's out there, a couple of things really ring true. One, we can change. Two, we need to seek first to understand what is happening. What is burnout? And what do we do about it? And then we need to be really helpable. I'm really excited to have with us somebody that knows a lot about this and that can help us on the helpability and also the seeking first to understand. After 15 years as an ER doc working in high-stress situations, our guest really understands the science and the application of wellness and burnout prevention principles. Dr. Tamara Beckford is with us. She is a board-certified emergency medicine physician. She is an author. She is a speaker. And today she's here to help us understand the physiology of burnout, the principles that leaders and individuals, all of us, can use to be better together at work and to live burnout-free. Welcome, Dr. Beckford, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and for sharing me with your lovely audience.
Oh, yes. And I didn't even mention, Dr. Beckford actually has her own podcast where she has spoken to over 250 physicians on this topic as well. And I highly recommend that you check out the podcast, the Dr. Tamara Beckford Show, yes?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. So there's another great podcast that you can add to your podcast subscriptions that you can also hear directly what it's like from the physician point of view. So thanks, Dr. Beckford, for being here. And I wanted to start first with why the focus on burnout for you?
Yes. That's such a great question. Like, why the focus on burnout from an ER doctor? We remember this thing in 2020 where it was gloomy and dark. There was something that was looming from across the ocean. It got here, and we had no idea what it was. I and a lot of my colleagues were the front line of this. And there was a lot of despair. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of burnout that happened during that time. And ironically, I didn't burn out. I thrived during that time. So as 2020 to 2021, I had to look back and wonder, why is it that during the height of when I should have been burning out, I did not? I realized there were a few things that I started to implement in my life a couple years before. Like all of 2019, I started to do certain little routines, and I did not realize that I was using all of this to prepare for something I had no idea was coming. When I saw my colleagues going through burnout, anxiety, stress, even my medical director said, "Wow, you are really faring this thing very well," I realized, you know what? This is something that I have to show others how to do. And that's when I started to focus on burnout. I didn't feel like it was safe and right for me to just hold on to all that information for myself. And that's when I started to work on that.
That's amazing. The term burnout came from the helping professions, from the medical profession. So certainly didn't start during the time of the pandemic, but I can understand navigating that and saying, why is it that so many people around me are going through this and I am okay.
Exactly.
Like, how is that? And then that being the thing that makes you feel like, okay, well, I want to help other people. In fact, I mean, honestly, that's why I'm doing this podcast. It's a passion project because as I was learning how to be well and what burnout was, similarly, I thought there's so much out there that's not good information. Let's bring some of the data into it. And here you and I get to sit today and have this great conversation.
Absolutely.
So that's completely understandable why you started.
Yeah.
Where do we all start? So it makes complete sense why you are focusing on burnout, but how do we understand and recognize what burnout is?
Great question. What is burnout? We hear it, and a lot of times we use the term very loosely. The true definition is that it is a physiological response and a psychological response to chronic workplace stress. It's not, at this time of our recording, been placed as a part of a direct mental illness, but it's pretty close. We find that those who are going through burnout, it is a liken to someone who's going through mental illness. I often tell people burnout is not a switch that flips on and off and it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired on Friday. I'm so burnt out, but by Monday I feel great. No. Burnout gradually comes. I liken it to if you used to like watching nature videos and National Geographic like I did, and you'll see the panther or the lion when they're creeping through the tall grass. By the time you spot them, it's too late. And that's something that can happen with burnout. It seeps in. So what are some of the phases of burnout? The first phase of it, you have started this job or you're in this job for any extended period of time and you feel like you're having a great impact. You are making suggestions. The suggestions, they're either saying, yes, I like that, or maybe we'll work on that a little bit, but you feel like you're having a great impact. And then there's this onset of stress that starts. The acute stress, you're able to manage it, but sometimes it can be due to unrealistic expectations. It's either brought on by you yourself. Maybe you have this new role and you feel like I am going to change 35 years of culture in the next 2 years. Unrealistic expectations, right? And then you have the chronic stress. With the chronic stress, that's when you start to get the big overwhelmed. You feel it coming on. You start to have some of what we call in medicine psychosomatic symptoms. So what's that? That's when your physical symptoms are happening to your body. It is also having some psychological factors, but no one can find any origin of it. We can't find the reason. So yes, I'm having this headache. Yes, I'm having the stomach ache. I am pretty sure I have an ulcer. So I'm getting scoped from the top to the bottom and everything is showing up fine. You're getting MRIs, you're getting scans, and everything is turning out quote unquote fine, but you know that you do not feel fine. That's what we call the psychosomatic symptoms, right? So then you move from that to phase 4, which is the true burnout. Now, when you're in true burnout, that is the exhaustion. That's the I am out in the parking lot. I have my head on the steering wheel. I am using every ounce of internal motivation to get into that building. And there are some tears. I finally go in. I'm in the building. I'm cynical. Everything is getting on my nerves. Even though I'm producing work that's having an impact on others, I don't feel as if it's gratifying what I'm doing. And we all know when we put our energy into something, you should feel some type of reward because there's a reward system. We're naturally built that way. So this lack of reward, it's just have us feeling like, what is the use? Then we move on to the 5th phase, which is the crisis phase. And in that crisis phase, that's when I said it's likened to mental illness. When you are in the crisis phase, you are feeling hopeless and helpless. There's a difference between saying, what is the point of me being in this job? There's a difference between saying that and what is the point of me even being on earth? So there's this fine line between the suicidal ideation and the intrusive thoughts that happen. These are thoughts where they're coming into your mind not because you wanted to, it's just intruding. That's why it's so important for us to talk about burnout. That's why it's so important for us to undo that, because we can lose people. We lose physical lives. People are losing their lives because of burnout. And that's why, in addition to the first part of the story, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah. You know, I consider myself to still be in that recovery phase. Mm-hmm. I love the idea or the visual that you give of the panther creeping unnoticed through the grass, and then suddenly you are like, oh my God, there's a panther right there. What the heck? I didn't even know. But if you really had been keyed in on, I think I hear something rustling. What is that? You would have absolutely been aware. But because we're all so busy and we're all so, I hear the term a lot, trying to push past it or get through it, right? We might be not able to even notice that, no, there's a panther like 4 feet away from you, and it's really that dangerous.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a great, I'm going to steal that visual because it is really great that to think about it as just a stealthy arc that's happening that, you know, by the time you realize, oh heck, I got to get out of here. It's maybe too late.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here we have now this idea of the crisis. We understand that there is, I think it's also really important what you said. It's really different to say, I can't make a difference here and I don't want to be here at work, versus I can't make a difference or make my life make sense. But it does, and I've seen some of the data on this, it does creep into the idea of people who are in that crisis phase have a much higher rate of suicidal ideation.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it's so dangerous and so important that people like you are putting their time toward helping us recognize and recover from burnout. So physically, when we're feeling that way, is happening inside of our body. If I understand what you're saying, maybe there is no tumor, maybe there's no, you know, major illness happening, but physically something is wrong. So what's going on in our body that is causing us to actually physically manifest this feeling of stress and anxiety? What's happening in our body?
The Podgress Report is brought to you by me. Supporting this passion project by subscribing means I can continue bringing you incredible guests, their success stories, the latest research, and experts on healthy work, career development, entrepreneurism, and solopreneurism. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the report.
There are a couple things that we'll talk about the hormones, but let's talk about this neurobiology of what's going on with burnout. The front part of our brain is what we call our prefrontal cortex. That helps us to organize our thoughts. It helps us to do high cognitive functional things, right? To be able to say, first we do this, next we do that. It helps us to also make decisions that we know are split decisions, that are high functioning decisions. When we get to burnout, that part of the brain, it's as if it starts to just go mute. It is just overused to the point that it just starts to, almost as if it just starts to just get silent. And ironically, when you look at a lot of those who are going through some of the psychiatric problems, the same portion of the brain is starting to just go silent. So that's how close it is to the psychiatric illnesses. Now, when that part, the prefrontal cortex, starts to just slow down and you're just unable to make those decisions, and we've all been there, where someone asks us and you're just like, I can't even make another decision. I can't even make the decision to get up out of bed. Like that's
Right.
too big of a decision right now, right? That's your prefrontal cortex just really kind of shutting down. We are wired to survive. So the brain is like, well, that part's not functioning. So the other portion starts to go up, which is the amygdala. So the amygdala is our primitive brain. Our primitive brain is our fight or flight, and it's more like a fight. That part of the brain starts to just light up. It starts to look at everything from a standpoint of, are you harmful or not? That's it. We're not sitting here and finding a gray zone. Are you harmful or not? And if we really even look at some of the data and the statistics, they've had the data out there where we had someone pictures of a smiling face, a neutral face, and a negative or angry face. When that person is deep within burnout and the amygdala is really firing, they don't see a neutral face as a neutral face. They see it as a negative.
Wow.
So now, can you imagine when you're deep within that burnout, 66% of anything you're looking at is negative. So you are seeing everything as almost a threat. So yes, you are going through that part where I can't make decisions. If someone says something neutral to you, no, it's probably a negative comment, right? If someone is saying a positive comment, 30% chance that I even look at it because I am deep within the zone of negativity. That's the neurobiology that's going on. Now we can move on. We've all heard about this hormone cortisol. Cortisol is our get up and boom, shoots. And we are there. And of course, we know about adrenaline, but cortisol is there to really shoot us up. That's our spiking hormone that gets us up in the morning. Once you start to do things in a routine and you wake up without needing your alarm, that's your cortisol spike, right? Now, we need cortisol to give us a quick burst of energy. And that's what we needed during the primitive time. But we don't need cortisol to consistently be in our system. When that happens, our body starts to change its physiology. Right? Because cortisol is a steroid and it's a hormone and it releases glucose and sugar. Sugar is for energy. Now, do we need sugar in our system all the time? No, right? So that's why you start to have this consistent cortisol release. You start having heart-related issues. So yes, the first time you went, it might not be an issue. But if you're persistently under stress, then you can start having the buildup of heart disease. Your blood pressure is consistently elevated. And I've even seen that. I had a colleague recently who finally was able to take time off of work. He just had a baby. Now, can you imagine this? Imagine this. He just had a baby with his wife. And newborns, for anyone who's ever been around a newborn, you have to wake up every 2 hours to help to feed that newborn. This person, stress level went down from work. Even having to wake up every 2 hours, his blood pressure dropped 20 points. So that's how the persistent stress, the persistent cortisol in your system, that's what's happening, right? So that's why you're at risk factors for heart disease. That's why you're at risk factors for diabetes. That's what's going on hormonally in your system. Now, another thing that's happening, we talked about our hormones and the dopamine and really having the reward system. What reward? I don't even feel like I'm making an impact. So
you're saying here we have this person who's got elevated cortisol levels. They are not thinking in their executive function, their ability to think clearly and use their brain is almost flipped off because, as you said, they're in their primitive brain. Mm-hmm. It's like threat, not threat, threat, not threat. And that's about as elegant as it will get.
Absolutely.
And then that starts firing this higher level of cortisol, which then just continues to feed the body in an unhealthy way with the sugar and the anxiety
and the stress.
That's your fight or flight, right? So
Yeah,
now you're just constantly ready.
You're just ready to fight.
Right. And so now you're trying to bring in the idea of dopamine. Your body has this ability to bring in a reward system. And you're saying people at this level have nothing rewarding them anymore.
No, you don't feel like it. No, you don't feel like there's any reward.
And I think anybody that's really known somebody that's burned out, or if they've been unfortunate enough to experience that level of burnout, you know that feeling. I 100% can cop to. I know that feeling. I have gotten to that point where even when good things are happening, you're not, and you can realize it mentally. This might be something you can even recognize. This is a good thing. What is my problem here? I cannot find.
But you don't find it
thing.
in your heart, right?
Yeah.
In the heart, you don't feel it. Like cognitively.
So, but you're saying that's physiology doing that to us. Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of you who are unfortunate to be in that phase, no, there's nothing wrong. You are correct. You are correct. So you are not out of your mind when you feel that way. Like, why am I not feeling? I'm getting all these accolades, but why am I not feeling it within my heart? Yeah.
And it's because your body is reacting to
prolonged
the chronic and prolonged stress in the way that it's designed.
Absolutely.
But in the way that it's designed means you do lose some of the benefits of what life really is. You lose the ability to actually feel the joy that would probably help to reduce some of the stress.
Because we're not wired.
It's vicious. Yeah,
it is vicious.
It's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you say it's a cycle because number one, we're not wired to be under persistent stress. We are wired to have stress because it's important. You know, stress is important in our lives. That's how we made it this far. Our ancestors were able to make it this far. We were able to be heightened awareness of danger. But when the danger is not there, but the stress level is persistently there, our body is not wired to be under that chronic release of cortisol. And that's why we're having this damage that's happening.
So your body's working as it's designed, but we're not living in the way that the body was built to support.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, and we all know that. Hey, everybody, we all feel that. We're feeling that. So we all know that. We all feel that. This has been really helpful to kind of go through the physiology. And I think, and I want to say thank you to you for reminding all of us, the body is doing what the body is designed to do.
Absolutely.
We're not using our life in the way that the body was designed to support.
Yes.
So what do we do about it?
Break the cycle.
Okay.
Now,
that
sounds easy,
it's not
but
easy.
Absolutely. It is not easy.
Yeah.
Now, one of the ways, and this also has been researched by a psychiatrist actually at Yale. I can't recall his name at the top of my head right now. But when you are deep within that burnout zone that we talked about, where the cognitive function is just down and the amygdala is taking over, that primitive part of our brain is taking over, we now have to invoke the senses. The senses are our sights, our taste, our smell, our hearing, our touching. So that actually helps to break the cycle. Now, when a lot of us are deep within that zone, we start to just ignore some of the, what we call the simplicities in life, right? But if you are someone who is deep within, if you even liked to do anything that invoke the senses, you start to tap into it, and then you have to be conscious of that, right? So for example, if you're someone who liked to cook, and you like to cook, but you haven't done it because it's just been like, I had no time and you take a time and just do something simple. even if it's kneading the dough, just the act of touching, you start to invoke the senses. And then you have to be intentional and just slow down for a moment. And then when you're cooking, smell the aroma. Let your taste buds start to release the juices ahead of time. When you're eating, slow down and chew. Now, that's something that sounds so simple, but I remember even talking at a conference not too long ago.
I saw that online. You posted it.
Yes.
I'm so glad you're talking about this because I didn't have it in my notes, but I can't wait for you to talk about this.
Yes, there's so many of us. We chew 1, 2, 3, swallow, and that's it. We haven't tasted the food. And I also am guilty of this. As we said, I'm an ER doctor. Like, I don't get time to have mindful eating at work, right? But when I come home, I try. Because when we really just slow down, that also helps with our metabolism. It helps with so many different things. But the mindfulness of just breaking that rushed cycle, breaking that cycle to reinvigorate that prefrontal cortex, it requires us to listen to things around us. It requires us to slow down, smell, taste, feel, touch, and it really helps to break that. So some people, it might even require them to take a walk in nature and just listen. I have a group of ladies too within the last few weeks. We've been doing reboots. We call it the burnout reboots. And someone says, today I walked in nature and I felt so good. That's how our bodies were designed. To smell, to taste, to listen. And we forego all of that because we're in this new world where we're just going. And isn't it ironic that the prescription for this is going right back to how we were fully designed?
It's not really ironic because the way that you have described it to me makes so much sense. Our bodies are working as they were designed. Our life design has changed.
Absolutely.
Not for the better. But if we go back and put our body into situations, we put this organism into situations that are more normal.
Yes.
More typical of how our bodies were meant to work, which means, I love this, invoking our senses, then yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm a outdoor and nature person. I go outside generally every morning, but that's part of my recovery. I was always an outdoors person, but as I got sicker and sicker and sicker into my burnout, I didn't get outside. And it's so simple to go for a 10, 15, 20, 30 minute plus walk every day. And yes, no phone, no scrolling, no music, birds, air, leaves, the smell of nature. That has been a literal life changer for me. I love the idea of the food and the preparation. And then, yeah, I saw your content that you put out on eating and I watched, you had the camera so I could see some of the people react that had already done their 1, 2, 3 swallow. And people just have lost touch with using their body in the way we all have, not people, other people, me too, me included.
Absolutely.
We have lost touch with using our body in the way that it's actually designed and giving it a fair shot to be a great vessel to carry us through life.
Absolutely. And I love that, giving it a fair shot, right? We've like taken away that fair shot of our body to do it.
And then we wonder why we feel bad.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like if you were trying to run a marathon in sandals.
Yes. You'd wonder why your feet are sore and blisters.
You wouldn't wonder at all. You'd be like, well, I am wearing sandals, right? But that's what we're trying to do with our bodies. We're trying to carry our body into a race it wasn't meant to run.
Absolutely.
And by the way, a race I wouldn't sign up to run.
No, not intentionally. I don't think any of us intentionally want to go through burnout. And I do want to point out that even in my story, that as I looked back, I realized that during that time I didn't burn out, but I definitely had burnt out before.
Right.
And for those who are also battling burnout, you've mentioned about the cycle. It can be cyclical because I've spoken to many, many people who they said that I've burnt out more than once. Now, the second time, they might, because it's still that same panther, so they might have caught the panther a little earlier, but the panther still does its stealthily movement through those tall grass.
I'm going to tell you what I think, and then you tell me, because you do this for a living.
Absolutely.
I think that we, people that have suffered from burnout, which is a lot of us, right? But we then build like pathways that are now open that we could get back into these habits or these races we were never meant to run. Meaning, when I start to, I'm going to use me as an example, but when I start to notice, I think I hear a panther rustling over there. And one, I'm better at noticing it.
Yes.
But I do take the responsibility for, did I get outside in the way I had committed to? Did I take time to do some of the other things that I do to invoke my senses? Did I write? Did I stay, prioritize my time, put my boundaries up in the rightest way to meet my goals and to feel then efficient and effective? These are things that are important to my own recovery. And many times I'll go like, no, I didn't take time for meditation. I didn't take time to get outside. And as such, I can see, well, my week went a little bit wonky as a result. And then you feel like, oh, I'm on the second step of the cycle and I don't want to get all the way on the ride.
Yeah,
what do you think?
That's a very, very fair assessment, because as we start to notice, the more someone goes through burnout, and hopefully you're 1, 2, and done because you're recognizing the signs, there are certain aspects that that puts you in to a position to hear the panther coming. And part of it is our natural tendency at a lot of people who are type A personalities, perfectionists. Sometimes we can start to substitute one for the other, and we put ourselves in burnout unknowingly.
So you're saying you can layer in so many things at once to recover that it becomes stressful.
Yes. If you are a type A personality and, for example, running was a way for you to cope because you're in nature, you're running in nature, but then you move from that to a marathon, that was great. Ultra marathon, then now your focus is just on this. And now you are so zoned into that you're starting to even lose some of the joy. Everything that you were using it for, you have now used it against you. So one just has to be mindful of that. But it's still important that when you are in and you're using your different modes to recover from burnout, that you're doing just that. It should be relaxing. It should reinvigorate you. It should not be another source of anxiety.
This is so important because I have spoken with many folks that are these high-performing individuals, and I do also recognize in myself a bit that it's easy to layer in. Well, if one burnout recovery technique is good, then 3 might be better. Or if a 1-step morning routine might be great, then a 10-step morning routine might even be better. And there's a ton of hustle culture out there.
Yes.
There's a ton of people that call themselves specialists that are out there that are building these really complex programs that I think add to that perception as well. So it's important to make sure that whatever you're doing, yes, it's balanced.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want it to be antithetical to your goal, which is health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we started with individuals. I really am excited to also talk about the fact that the individual's burnout's happening because of the workplace and your reaction to what's going on in your workplace. So if 50-ish or more % of us are feeling this way, it's not just one kind of workplace. It's the workplace as a monolith, even though the reasons might be different. So as leaders, we all have responsibility to trying to build a healthier or foster a healthier workplace. So this happens less. So our teams are more engaged. It's expensive to have a highly disengaged and unhealthy team.
Yes.
It's not good for business. It's not good for theft. It's not good for attrition. It's not good for attendance. It's not good for
Overall.
people. And it's not good for companies. So how does an organization even assess the wellness of their teams?
That's a great question. It starts with a one-to-one, really. Okay. The managers getting the feedback from the team. Now, when I say the feedback, there are ways that you can get feedback, and there are certain little underlying statements that might come if you're not attuned to it. You might not realize like this is saying, this is like a cry for help that this team member is burnt out. When you start having your one-to-one and you're getting the feedback or even surveys, I should say, it doesn't always have to be a one-to-one, but it's a survey, so to speak. And you're hearing things like, well, I feel like there's favoritism going on. And, it's so hard for the average person to move up in this particular organization. I feel that there are roles that are not aligned. Once you're hearing some of those emotional distress, then there's a huge amount of burnout that's happening. Why? When someone is happy within the organization, they feel that they are given to the organizations and they are also receiving. Now, we've talked about the dopamine rush and the release and the reward system. In an organization, no one goes in to give their hard-earned time, which is the most precious thing that we all have, right? To not be fulfilled and to not learn and to not build and grow. So if the person is in the organization and they're saying they don't feel like there's any ability to grow here, there's favoritism, there's no way to advance, that's an underlying statement that they're feeling like, well, what is my point, right?
And I think there's also the idea of, and I don't know that my work matters.
Exactly.
I don't know that the time I'm spending here, which, like you said, time is the most valuable thing we have. We're not guaranteed another minute on this earth. And if we're going to spend it in a place that makes us feel like it doesn't matter, that is the term that I've been using is soul erosion, right?
So I love it.
It's from the Maslow burnout.
Yeah.
So that soul erosion, it's the best term I've ever heard to describe what's happening, because no one wants their soul to erode. It is the essence of you. And
that's, we all have this, like Simon Sinek said, we all have a why. Now, my why and his why and your why are different, but we all have a why, a purpose. There's a reason why you step into that building and you get that fresh scent. You know what I mean? There's a difference when you step into some place with that versus another building where you're like, I do not want anything to touch me in here.
Right. Or you go in and you still have that desire to really make an impact, but you see, I don't think that it's fair. The work doesn't make sense. The way we spend our time doesn't make sense. The way that people are rewarded doesn't make sense. So when you start as a leader, to hear these fire signs, whether through a survey or through a direct one-to-one, what do you do?
It's time to sit down. You say it's time to implement. The first step is to acknowledge. Now, we can't go with egos. We have to really do what's best for the team. And remember that the organization is a team of people, right? It's not just one person at the top. That person at the top has a team under them. So it's time to put our egos aside and to acknowledge that burnout is happening. So once you start to acknowledge it, then it's time to start to implement systems. So one is training, because the team might not know how to express it. They're expressing it the best way they know how. So they need to be taught, like, hey, it appears that you are feeling burnt out. Like, this is what's going on. And these are some of the ways that we're going to help. Yes, you might have your employee assistant programs, but do they know what it entails? Because like less than 2% of people, like they're not even using it. What does it entail? So it's time to start to acknowledge people during the meeting, right? It's time to start to show them, listen, these are some ways that we can offset some of what we're feeling. Do you have any suggestions? Is there anything that you have used when you felt this way that you might want to share with the team? And if you're not getting anything, bring in the outside help.
Yeah. And that's, I think, really important because, and I come back to this a lot, we're asking a lot of our managers.
Yes.
We're asking a lot of our managers. And managers as a group in the Gallup Global Workplace study that came out in June, managers as a group are feeling worse than the teams that they lead. So we have a responsibility to also better support our managers. Because managers are the front line to the change. If we don't help them get the help and invoke their own senses and know how to recognize this,
because the pressures on the managers are so much, because
So
even
much.
the statistic says that the manager has more of a mental effect on the workers than their own physicians.
Right.
So the workers will feel the effect of the managers and they will listen to them. So
that's
can you
where
imagine that pressure?
Yes, I can. And unfortunately, everyone that's a leader can, no matter the level of leadership, because they are trying to manage to the expectations of the folks that are above them, passing down the goals of the company, the mandate of the organization. But then you have the people that are pushing up as well, saying, I need help.
Yes.
I need my work to make more sense. I need the team dynamic to make more sense. I need to feel more like it's mutually beneficial. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think that's the key, is how do we help our managers and our leaders know how to lead through this effectively?
Absolutely.
And the benefits to the company, like it's a win-win-win-win-win if we do that.
Absolutely. It is such a win for the company.
It's like the most three-dimensional win. It's big. We start with the individuals, but then when we need to bring in someone, this is where helpability comes in. Get help. Don't expect that everybody understands what is the EAP program. How do you ask questions about your employee wellness? Help our leaders do it. And that's where someone like you can come in.
Yes.
And just have these open discussions.
Absolutely.
I want to just say to you, Dr. Beckford, your content has been, to me, personally to me, incredibly helpful. The way you put it together today, where we talked about the primitive brain, the idea of your body being a system that's working as designed, but the design of our life not being optimal for the systems we have, that is really compelling. And then the idea of that jaguar, that stealthy jaguar that's stalking us, we need to be really aware of it. This is, be mindful. I thank you so much for your time today and for putting all the puzzle pieces together, and also for the work you're doing to make the workplace a better place, because it's good for all of us.
Absolutely.
We have a better place to be for that much of our time, our precious, precious time. So thank you for your time today, for the work you do, and for breaking it down for us today on the Podgress Report.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Dr. Beckford shared some incredible lessons on the biology of burnout and how we can all get on the burnout recovery path. What jumps out at me after this conversation were three main takeaways. Takeaway one, we all need to understand the causes and the physiology of burnout, and we need to understand what's going on with us. Stress and anxiety absolutely can cause physical issues. Pushing past burnout is not going to be the healthy path. And if you're a leader, it's not the healthy example and it will erode that trust that is so important to a healthy workplace. I've linked the Maslow burnout assessment in the episode notes. It is a low-lift way you can assess where you are in the burnout cycles and also start to understand steps you can take to recovery. But on that, Dr. Beckford gave us a great phrase, which was, we need to invoke our senses. More than 50% of us claim to experience some level of burnout. This level of stress means we are not using our beautiful, beautiful brains in the way that is best for us. We're not using our prefrontal cortex, where our high-functioning, most effective decision-making thinking is supposed to be happening. When we are burned out, we are in our primitive brain, in the amygdala, and that is our fight or flight mode. It puts us deep into what Dr. Beckford called the zone of negativity. I've linked the article that Dr. Beckford mentioned on Yale's study on the impact of burnout on the brain. I encourage you to give it a read. And a pro tip from Dr. Beckford: don't overdo your recovery plan. I'm going to admit to you, I have also been guilty of this. I have adopted plans that took a lot of time and a lot of effort and ended up feeling stressy. If it's too complex, if it requires more energy or time than you have to give, it's not actually a recovery plan. It's an additional stressor, and it's going to add to your burnout. Takeaway 3 for me is get and give help. If you are a manager, leaning into understanding the health of your team is job 2. Job 1 is you, ensuring that you're on the path to health. You may need an accountability partner for your recovery. With over 50% of us experiencing some level of burnout, the person that just came into your mind when I said that might benefit from partnering with you too. For me, it is super helpful that my family knows the exact steps I take for my recovery plan. And when I fall off the wagon even a little, they are able to see it and gently raise it with me to check in with how I'm doing and what I'm going to do to get back on that path. For your team, it starts with asking questions about their wellness. I lay this out in an earlier episode, which I've linked below. But if you need more direct and more immediate support, you're not alone. This is where organizations like Dr. Beckford's come in. I've linked Dr. Beckford's contact details in the episode notes and encourage you, if you like what you heard today, this is what she does. Reach out to her and get the help that you and your team deserve. If this episode was helpful, share it right now with someone you care about. Maybe your future burnout accountability partner. You never know. You may help somebody take a step they really need to get well, to invoke their senses, to get on that path, or to be a better, stronger leader and make the workplace a healthier place. Thank you for listening today and for your feedback. Keep it coming. Together, we can make the workplace a better place. And that's good for all of us. Until next time, here's to our progress.
Hi, it's Jen with some very important fine print. This podcast and its associated properties does not provide medical or mental health advice. Nothing on the Podgress Report is intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And please, if you're under duress or considering suicide, please reach out right this very minute to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 in the U.S. or searching for the helplines available to you in your country.